When you had a new PlayStation and not many games, you often turned to the included demo disc. You can only imagine the playtime that these demos received. My go-to game was Warhawk, and I absolutely loved it. However, with new exciting games coming out, it became overshadowed and never managed to make the cut when it came time to snag a new title. Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, Test Drive Off-Road. Okay, we don't always make the best decisions. But now the day has finally come. Today, we take a look back at Warhawk. Warhawk was developed by SingleTrack and published by Sony Computer Entertainment in November of 1995, a few months after the US PlayStation launch. Warhawk is a futuristic action flight combat game where you take control of the International Force's premier attack aircraft, the aptly named XA-165 Warhawk, a vertical takeoff and landing craft that maneuvers with a full 360 degrees of flight control, battling Krill's army over 6 distinct and unique levels. The polygonal 3D graphics and open environments were astonishing for its time, and gave early adopters a taste of what the PlayStation was capable of. The firepower at your disposal is highlighted by the Swarmer missiles, which are a standout visually and iconic for the game, albeit not the most powerful. These, as well as the lock-on missiles, use an automatic lock-on feature that will target the nearest enemy your craft is centered on. It works well for the most part. Just make sure a random enemy doesn't get in your path before you fire. In the September 1995 issue of GamePro, associate producer Mike Guillaume stated, "In Warhawk we were trying to create a flight action game that nobody had seen before. Games like Afterburner are shooters that just happen to have planes in them, whereas in Warhawk we actually give you the sensation of flight. We looked at shooters like Afterburner and Star Fox and we juxtaposed their arcade feeling with the freedom of a computer flight sim." So now let's fire it up and jump into the action. The game starts out placing you in a first-person cockpit view. This is how I remember playing the demo, and it does work fine for the first level and others that are fully open environments. But as much as the developers want you to believe this game lies somewhere in the simulation genre, ditching first-person view to go with third-person is when I think the game truly begins to shine. Getting there requires holding start and pressing up or down to change views, so it's no wonder I didn't know about this option beforehand. This becomes extremely helpful by the game's second level, as you navigate narrow canyons and later levels which are much more confined and less spacious. Control-wise, the game handles quite well, with tight controls, a good sense of momentum, and a pleasant overall feel of flying your craft. You'll be able to focus on fighting enemies, not the controls, as long as you remember the overall capabilities at your disposal. The wide open set piece levels will benefit from zooming across the skies, avoiding enemy fire and unleashing on your target, but the confined levels benefit from a slower pace and using your craft's full maneuverability. The game features a thrust meter that you increase or decrease with L2 and R2, so it's easy to set the right speed for the situation, and when needed, X fires up the afterburners to quickly accelerate out of danger. Hovering your craft around a set target and strafing left or right is a strategy that will become second nature and vital to easily advancing onwards. Once I realized this and stopped treating the craft like a conventional fighter aircraft, things became much easier. The game features 6 different levels which can be grouped into 2 different types. The first type are the open environments, which include the game's first level, which is a desert environment showcasing a pyramid in its center. The third level, which has you battling a fleet of enemy ships over open water, and the fourth level, which is one of the most visually impressive. You start below the clouds with a water landscape full of rock pillars. The wow moment is when I realized you could pierce through the cloud cover and access the skies above. Just a really cool level design and something I was not expecting from a game of this era. The second type are the confined levels, including the second level, which has you flying through narrow canyons, and the game's fifth level, which is nothing but narrow corridors. I would definitely classify these levels as the weakest links. The restrictive nature they bring just isn't as fun as freely flying around levels. The game's story is standard fare for the genre and told through live-action cutscenes interspersed between levels. You take on the role of the Warhawk's 2 pilots, Hatch and Walker, who are tasked with stopping the evil villain Krill and his armies, in an attempt to thwart his plans of global domination. The source of Krill's power is revealed to be a substance known as red mercury, and your objective in each level is to obtain it. The cutscenes are about as bad as you would expect for the era.
I will show you the face of true power. I will destroy you. All.
But this brings us to one of the game's main flaws, Creel's army, and the fact that it is seemingly pointless to engage any target other than the required level objective. Attacking and destroying enemy aircraft, tanks, or guns does provide a slight reprieve of enemy fire, but the ammo wasted is better used to quickly destroy the enemy structures needed to complete your objective. Because your craft has shields that recharge over time, as long as you just keep moving and don't set yourself as an easy target, the enemy fire isn't much of a threat through most of the game. But this isn't to say the game is easy. Far from it. With a good handle of the game's combat and controls, you'll easily find yourself dashing through the first 3 levels, with thoughts of an easy, no-death playthrough in your future. But the difficulty ramps up 2-fold in the game's 4th level, and a millionfold by the game's 5th, aptly named the Gauntlet. The confined space and environmental hazards added with a near constant barrage on your shields leads to a very frustrating experience. With only 3 lives at your disposal and no save feature, the game instead relies on the use of a password system, with the password of each level located in the pause menu of the current level. So after surviving the Gauntlet, you set up the final showdown with Creel. The game's final level has you making your way up a gothic tower, destroying its defenses along the way with a backdrop of lightning and a booming music track that completes the foreboding atmosphere. After a short cutscene, Creel emerges in his rather bizarre looking aircraft and the battle is on. You need to keep a balance of being close enough to enable your missiles to lock on, but not close enough to be hit by his devastating lightning attacks. This is an extremely tough fight, but patience is key. Finally, after destroying each section of his craft, the mouth opens, enabling your crew to make the ultimate sacrifice. You kamikaze the Warhawk in, detonating the Red Mercury and bringing an end to Creel and to the game. You are then treated to one of the game's 4 different endings, obtaining a different one depending on how you defeat Creel. Although the game tells the story completely through live action cutscenes, the endings are all told via scrolling text. This is a bit of a letdown, but understandable due to the game's budget and the general production values of the live action scenes that are available. The credits then roll, and the game is finished. Overall, I think Warhawk holds up quite well. The levels offered are unique, and you never feel like you're retreading the same ground, but this does come at the expense of being a fairly short game. Much like Singletrack's other game developed at this time, Twisted Metal, the game places a huge difficulty spike halfway through that you can't help but think was in part to pad out the length. But great visuals, tight controls, and an epic soundtrack come together to make this a standout game for an early title in the PlayStation's life. In its time, Warhawk was released to overwhelmingly positive reviews. EGM gave the game scores ranging from 9 to 9.5. Next Generation gave the game 4 out of 5 stars. And GameFan gave the game scores of 97 and 98, stating, "Warhawk is the perfect blend of a truly movie-quality soundtrack, engulfing gameplay, and special effects that shoot everything else out of the sky." Aside from the original longbox release, the game was also released in a jewel case variant as well as the greatest hits, with current prices around $20. Warhawk has also somewhat lived on, with an online multiplayer-only remake which was released for the PS3 in 2007. So that's a look back at Warhawk. A great game for its time and one that I still feel is worth going back to today. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you next time.
I will destroy you all.